Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Marketing Fix Show. Before I introduce today's guest, I want to tell you that this episode, the show at the moment, is sponsored by the Digital School of Marketing. And the Digital School of Marketing is where you need to go if you want to learn the survival skill of the future. That's right. I believe it's a survival skill of the future. And if you don't believe me, we'll just have a chat in 10 years' time. The Digital School of Marketing.co.za is where you're going to go to learn all the digital skills you need to further your career and potentially start your own business. Their courses are accredited nationally and internationally. And if you subscribe to our podcast, whether it's on YouTube or on the site itself, maybe even on iOS or Android or Spotify, wherever you're listening, you stand a chance to win a free course worth $11,500. And that is it. So, on to our guest for today, Bronwyn Schultz. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I have an issue of pronouncing people's names usually, and I'm not just good at it, so I'm very glad that I got it right.
Well done. Most people get it wrong.
Ah, okay.
So, yeah, I'm not. It's,
Victory.
yeah, I'm completely used to mispronunciations.
You've made my Friday. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And you are the head of content discovery at Multichoice, correct?
No.
Oh, damn it.
No, I work within the content discovery department.
Okay.
So I'm marketing manager and content curation
Okay.
manager.
Is that what you do?
Yes.
Awesome. And we're going to talk about content marketing, the importance of it, how it works in the digital landscape, what maybe a little bit of what you guys have done, some feedback, and I'm just truly excited to get into it. So thank you so much for coming through, and thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start a little bit with the origin story, just a little bit about who you are, where you're from, how you ended up at Multichoice, and let's take it from there.
Cool. Yeah. It's a long story, but I'll try and make it short.
Cool. Thank you.
I have a CV that confuses HR people like a hell of a lot.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. They was like, this thing. Explain it to me.
Yeah, just give me 30-second rundown.
So, I mean, I've always loved TV, and growing up, we didn't have a TV in our house. I used to climb over the wall and go and watch TV through the neighbor's lounge window.
Really?
Until they were like, you can come inside.
Oh, shame, man. And how old are you?
I was like 8, 9.
Really?
You know, they just, so eventually they were like, come inside.
Oh, shame, man. That's so cool.
And my cousin sort of led the charge. She's quite a bit, well, not quite a bit, a little bit older than me. And she got into the industry early. And so it sort of opened some doors for me. I got to visit some sets while I was still in school and that. And then one of my first jobs was running for her, like an on-set runner for her. And I've never worked so hard in my life. We were so, careful that no one thought it was nepotism.
Yes.
That it just killed me.
Shame, man.
From that, I met some on one of the shoots. I met someone from a above the line agency, and landed up working within that agency, and sort of started teaching myself how to edit, how to write, and became a promo producer for a while. And that was a great journey because it took me to London for a while.
Oh, wow.
I lived and worked in London. I worked for Showtime.
Okay.
While I was there, and that has now become OSN in the Middle East. So when we launched, we were based in London, broadcasting into the Middle East. We were in competition with Orbit, and now those two have merged together. But what was great about London was public transport and film schools. So what I would do is, as I wanted to learn skills, I would go to the film schools and buy textbooks. And then on the underground, while I was commuting, just read. So I'd learn to edit, I'd learn to write, and I wanted to direct. So I bought the books,
Yes.
learned to direct. When I came back after a period in London, I became creative director at an agency here. Worked across Mnet, KTV back in the day. Aging myself terribly.
Yes.
Spent some time working in Australia after that, which was very exciting. I worked for the Australian Defence Force. And this was really where I first started experiencing content marketing.
At the Australian
Defence Force. So they...
You're going to have to articulate a little bit more of that, yeah.
So they had a magazine show that we would cut and produce. And it went out on Sky once a week. And really it was a recruitment tool. But what we did is we shot actual footage of combat and combat training and then cut it in such a way that it looked like Top Gun to get people to obviously join the Defence Force, the Australian Defence Force. And then once they were in, we shot these beautiful like human stories about some of the people that were in the Defence Force. So there was one guy we met who said to us, look, where he came from was deep rural Australia. And he said to us, like, my actual future was whether I'd become a functional or not functional alcoholic. Like, that was all that was ahead of me in my life. And I've joined the Defence Force, and now I'm a mechanical engineer. And so we started, recording. Yes, it was amazing. And we started recording these human stories. So instead of just doing the sort of whiz bang, fast planes, boo, pew, 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 we started telling the human stories. And that really started resonating with people because they could see themselves. There's we have this vision of Australia, of Sydney, Melbourne, woohoo, but there's deep rural Australia where there's guys that have like no hope really. And
Similar, yeah.
yeah, and the Defence Force, you can get full degrees if you're in there, and we started telling those stories and people started resonating with them. Came back from Australia, came back here, and actually opened my own agency for a little while with some business partners from Cape Town.
Okay.
And there we just said we're a full service agency. A lot of the time we didn't know what we were doing, but if a client needed a thing, they were like, can you do this thing? I'm like, yeah,
of course
we can do it. I'd go back to
and that's how most agencies start.
I would go back to my studio and go, guys, does this word make sense to anyone? Or does anyone know how to do this thing? And then invariably someone would be like, I don't, but I have a friend, or, and we just grew the agency there. And I had clients again back in Mnet. We were a tiny agency, so we had the smaller channels. So Mnet Action, back in the day when it was a general entertainment channel that was just for men, so it was like it had series, it had all sorts of things on. And we had opportunity to play because it wasn't really a high priority channel, so it wasn't a high profile channel. So it was just, social media was just sort of becoming this thing that you could possibly use. And we had some really cool ideas on like how to use social media. So we did some guerrilla marketing for shows. There was a little show called V. It was the remake of the old 80s show.
Okay.
It's like a very mediocre show. It came, it went. Blah. We did the most cool stuff where we put posters up under underpasses where you normally see gig posters.
Yes.
And we said, who is John May? And then who is John May and why does he need an army? And then we put a Facebook handle on, and then people followed, and and we were like, this is cool. This is much more effective than just making a promo and putting it on air. Yeah. And that's kind of how I sort of started exploring, other media than just on air, which is where I'd kind of come from. And then from there, and eventually took the leap into corporate, came into Multichoice, really wanting to learn the business of TV at that point. So I'd oftentimes sit with a client and they'd say, we need to do this. And I'm like, why? It makes no sense. I don't, like, what? Why are they doing things and how do they make these decisions? Where does the content come from? How does this all happen? So I got in any means possible and got great experience through video on demand, catch up, running some of those operational teams for a while. I worked in the legal department for a little while, which was very interesting. Yeah, excuse you. No, it was very interesting because I got to see why certain shows are on, why certain shows...
And why certain shows are really successful.
Yes,
as well.
And also why some of those weird shows are there, and there's bundle deals and that sort of thing. Okay, that makes sense, and how the negotiations happen and really what goes into that, and that's been invaluable. And then finally I kind of got to my destination, which was the marketing department within DSTV, just at a time when this sort of idea of content discovery was coming alive.
Yeah.
Like my boss likes to say is we physically sit inside of marketing, but we spiritually work across the entire business.
Yeah.
It's very exciting what we're doing right now because we get to work with the really clever nerds who are making recommendation engines and algorithms and things, and I learn new words every day.
Yeah.
And we do some traditional marketing, on air. On air is super powerful still, we can't discount that.
No, for sure.
But then just expanding it out onto all the different media available and just getting to where our customers are, as opposed to just standing on a platform and shouting at them.
It's all about where the attention is.
Yes.
Where's the attention and where can you articulate it the best?
Yes.
And after articulating what you had to obviously now, articulate, how easily can people take action after that? I think that's usually how I explain it. Is like, where's the attention? How well can you articulate the message that you need to articulate? And then on top of that, how easy are you making it for people to take action after that? And I think that's how you identify new channels that are actually powerful. And you'll find that, in my opinion, that's why social media, back in the day, and from an organic perspective, was so powerful, because it had a lot of attention, was very easy to click to go to the site and buy.
Yes.
There was no friction between it. And I think that's kind of like what I've heard you kind of like connect the dots now. That's kind of like what I heard. And content discovery, like maybe just give us a little bit of an indication. Like you've said now, spiritually you work across the whole realm, but maybe just give us a bit of a rundown on what that actually is and how it works. And
sure. So that there's always been marketing, right? So we go, hey, we have this show, it's amazing, it's on this channel at this time, watch it.
Yeah.
And that certainly has its place. We know that people still, engage with on-air promos. They still respond to them. They still watch TV, right? But we also know that the market has changed massively, and our customers have changed massively. And they're not only just sitting there absorbing messages that we hurl at them all the time. Also, PVRs, we sell PVRs, which means you can skippy the very things we want to tell you about, right? So we have to start thinking about where are our customers and weave ourselves into kind of the fabric of popular society, as opposed to just being this obelisk that stands on a hill and shouts down at people going, we have amazing shows, watch them.
Yes.
So
I love how you explain that, by the way. Makes complete sense.
It's really like engaging with those customers, and in so doing, we have to look at UIs, so user interfaces, and what you're talking about, the friction points, is, we like to kill the click. So when we say, okay, we've told someone something's there, how do they get to it? How do they find it? How do you tip them over that final little edge into consuming? 3 clicks? Are you kidding me? No, I've got them to this point. We need 1 click from here, So that's where we get to work with, with the user interface guys and the UX guys, who do beautiful designs, and we get to sort of look at that from the customer perspective. So we very much come from the point of view of being our own customer. So I had a boss a few years ago who used to say, eat your own dog food.
Yes.
And, that's really it. Like, you can't... So I watch everything. I have stuff that I would watch by choice. Yeah, as a person. But in my job, I watch everything. Because if I'm in a...
Scrutinize it.
Yes. Scrutinize it, but also absorb it as a customer. So that if I'm in a position and someone says, oh, I like this type of content, I can say, oh, have you tried this?
Yeah.
So it's very much always making those connections between customers and content.
Yeah. The word empathy rings in my mind at the back, because you kind of like have to put yourself in the customer's shoes and kind of like, what emotions are they going to experience? Why is this show resonating with them? Because it's almost like an empathy standpoint. You need to be able to connect with that customer on that level and go like, this is why this resonates, and this is why we think it would resonate. Or is there a lot of market research? I'm also hearing that sounds like a lot of research happening behind the scenes, correct, obviously?
Yes. I mean, more and more we are, data-based. I mean, our research department grows every day, and we observe trends,
And that's becoming easier with technology. Yes. Like AI and machine learning makes your job a little bit easier, even though there's still a lot to do, but at least you're getting the brunt of the work done probably a lot easier now these days.
Yeah, and digital obviously is much easier to monitor, because you can actually track the entire journey from point A to point B. Back in the day of just above the line or on air, you put something in a place and you see, ratings, and you assume a correlation. Now you can actually kind of track journeys and say, okay, well, look here, we put this thing here. People clicked on it and they went there and they actually completed the journey.
Yeah.
Or they didn't. Why didn't they? And
they clicked on it and they didn't watch it. Maybe there's some form of disconnect between the ad and the actual, trailer or whatever it is.
And you can course correct, with a lot of agility now, because you can monitor things constantly. But what you're speaking about with empathy, right, is I always say to like the editorial writers that work for me in that, speak in the voice of the fanboy.
Yes.
So if you're speaking to someone who's a Trekkie, you better know your stuff, because that market is super critical. They will eat you alive. Correct. Likewise for PSL. Like, I don't even attempt to speak sport. I don't speak sports ball, but I have experts that do that for me. Because if I tried, it would be so inauthentic that, I'd be eaten alive and my message would die.
As marketers, we say you need to understand the day of your customer's shoes almost better than they understand it themselves. Or you need to be able to articulate the day in your customer's shoes better than they can. And that's how you really get into that mindset of who this person is, how they think, how they operate, the words they use to explain the environment, the emotions and everything like that. And I think that's very crucial. In terms of content, like content marketing, it's obviously always been around. I think Bill Gates coined the quote that said content is king. Even though I believe today it's more distribution, really, that's become the king, and content's more taken the queen's role. Or it's because I believe distribution is really important, because you can create the most beautiful content in the world, but if you're not putting it in front of people,
sure,
especially in an environment that's so noisy today. But taking a step back and looking at content from a digital perspective, it's playing a more important role than ever. And maybe we can talk a little bit about why that is. And you mentioned storytelling, people resonating. So I'd love to really, go deeper into that.
So interesting point on your content is king quote. So there's a few people who claim it. So Bill Gates claims it. Clem Santa, who was head of Viacom, who just passed recently,
yes,
he claimed it.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
So there's a few people who've claimed coining that phrase.
When you Google quotes on Google, then you just get all these random quotes, and
Yes.
people just randomly put names to it. Like, it's
Yes.
actually quite funny how that works.
I love where people make the memes of quotes and then they attribute it to Abraham Lincoln.
And he never said that, yeah.
He wasn't even alive, but I love it.
During
It's
those times,
it's on
yeah.
the internet, it must be true. But to your point on content marketing, so yes, it has been around for like ever and a day, right? But we are really seeing the value of it now, because, like you say, the distribution platforms are sort of overshadowing the content to a certain extent, For a long time within our industry, we've spoken about people watch shows, not channels. People watch shows. They don't watch platforms. And that's really, where we're at now, is to say, to a certain extent, that is true, that the platform is kind of overshadowing the content, but ultimately it's the content that people are after. And what we're trying to do with content discovery is remove all that friction in your journey, is to say, hey, what are you in the mood for? What do you like? Try this. And get you there as quickly and as easily as possible, so that you're not even aware of that platform anymore. Yeah. I think we've passed the point where, being able to watch TV on your phone is a thing anymore. It's expected. If we as a business were in the business we're in now and weren't able to deliver that, we wouldn't be in the business. So it's not a thing anymore to say like this platform, that platform, this platform, that platform. We need to, again, just see where our customers are. Where is your life? How do you live your life? What is your house like? Cool. We have a fit for you. Watch it like that. And then show you, this is the array of content that you actually want. So those platforms become irrelevant.
And if you think about Showmax, and if you think about Netflix, there's no channels. It's not channels anymore. Like, it's literally just a platform where the content gets recommended for you based on, what you've enjoyed. And I don't know what your involvement in Showmax is, or if you guys have an involvement in that in terms of your department or anything. But when it started, I didn't really have a great experience, to be honest. And now, like, it's definitely one of my top two favorite, platforms that I use, Netflix and Showmax. That's what I do. And there's so many other things that you could be doing these days. And I'm really, really enjoying it. Just because, like you said now, the algorithm, machine learning, whatever, it just understands who I am as a person, and it's starting to recommend content that just resonates with me as an individual a lot better. And these channels have turned into profiles.
Yes.
And that's kind of like how I see it. And I mean, and where it's going, it could quite become probably an episode by itself, on where this is leading. But in terms of content creation and, distributing it, and I think social media and digital marketing specifically, and I think a lot of people don't necessarily understand how content marketing links with the digital marketing side of it. People go, content, okay, cool, video, channel or episode or whatever it is. But it's really crucial because today you can't really market your business without content. Like we get clients all the time. We want to market our business. Okay, what assets do you have? What content do you actually have that we can show the world? And 9 out of 10 times they don't have anything. And I think that's something to maybe chat about, is like how the role between content and actually digital, and how those two kind of like have to integrate each other in order to really form something powerful.
So where our journey is interesting is we're making content about content. So, whereas, I don't know, an estate agent, they would just make content about a house. It's a house.
Yeah,
We've already got a TV show. And now we don't want our content marketing to be mini TV.
Yes.
Because then why don't you just watch it on the platform?
Yes.
So we're trying to find interesting ways of making content about the content. And this covers, we're everywhere, right? And like I said, we're trying to be, like, weave ourselves into our customers' lives. So, just this week, actually, we just launched some really cool stuff on YouTube. So instead of, by and large, our YouTube channel has been promos. So stuff you could see on air anyway, or maybe longer versions of that, some behind the scenes. Now we're really, really getting into the nitty-gritties of it, We've done some roundtables with our stars, which has been, in and of itself, has been quite challenging because, lockdown.
Yes.
So they Zoom roundtables, which are, it was a completely different experience in actually making them. Shooting them, obviously, one thing, recording off screen, but editing, poor editor, like, to begin with, was just like overwhelmed. How do I even cut this? There's no manual for how do you cut a Zoom interview.
Yeah, he has to like meditate for an hour just to try and figure.
Because it's actually almost Tetris.
Yes.
You're cutting grids.
Correct.
So there was that. We've got some amazing influencers that we're working with. Just engaging with them authentically. So today, actually this morning, just before I came here, we published our first video with Michlali, who's a renowned makeup influencer.
Okay.
And we chose her because we want her to do makeup. We're not going to get Michlali in and get her to talk about cars. So we've got her doing, recreating looks from content. So now you're seeing the content through a different lens.
Yes.
You're seeing this character, and Michlali loves her content. She knows her stuff. So while she's doing her look, while she's doing her makeup, and you're learning how to do makeup, which I could do a bit more, you're also learning about the content, but in a conversation with a friend kind of way.
Yes.
And she, the show that we partner with her on, she really likes, genuinely likes. So when she talks about it, she's really
It's true. It's
talking
authentic.
from the heart.
There's
Yes.
passion coming. Yeah.
Exactly, and it's a beautiful piece of content marketing that will live for a very long time. We've also, next week we'll be publishing pieces that we did with Coconut Kells, who brings her own kind of wacky view of things onto how she presents herself and her satire and her content, and getting involved in her process was amazing. She is a spectacular comedian and satirist, and she's doing some. It's actually called Skit It with Coconut Kells, and she basically reimagines content through the Kells lens. And she has an audience already that expect a certain thing from her. So again, with engaging with her, we just said, do you? Is this a show you could like? She's like, yeah, I totally like it. Cool. Let's do you. Like, let's brainstorm it. Let's figure it out with you. How do we do this? And these are then different lenses and different flavors that we're giving people to discover content through, rather than we have a great show.
Exactly. And I think in essence, there's two things I want to touch on, is that people don't understand that content is the gateway that gets you into, the actual brand or the message that you're trying to articulate. And I think content acts as the gateway to allowing the customer to do what you as the business, ideally want them to do. If you want them to consume content, the micro content that you're creating, this content around influences that you're creating, is the gateway that gets them there. And I think a lot of brands don't understand that, because when they create content, they just create content for the sake of content. And it's a matter of like, let's just do a post, or let's just make a video of the business, but they don't necessarily consider who this piece of content needs to speak to, what the end goal of the end message of this piece of content should be. And I think before anybody does anything in terms of creating content for the business, they need to take a step back and go, like, who are we trying to speak to at the end of the day? And then if you do it correctly, you'll start seeing how that actually acts as the gateway that I've mentioned. And then on top of that, I think you've mentioned influencers, and you mentioned, like, let them do their thing and let them be authentic. And I think so many brands are putting influencers in a box, and they look at influencer marketing. I don't want to digress too much, but it still touches on content marketing, is because of the fact that it's technically user-generated content, if you think about it. But ideally what happens is that the brand goes to the influencer and says, we want to tap into your audience, speak to them and tell them about our brand and our business and how awesome we are. And they go, cool, awesome, let's do it. And then when the agreement comes, they go like, but you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't do that. And before you know it, this influencer is in this box, trying to market the business or talk about the business or add value to her audience, with her hands tied behind her back.
Yeah, and I think you have to be authentic and aware of both your influencer and your platform. So actually on the influencer side, I once went to a very austere dinner, and they'd hired John Vlismus to be their MC. And then just before the dinner began, they said, you can't swear. I was like, dudes, why did you hire John Vlismus? And he was reduced to...
Correct.
He was reduced to making jokes out of people's names eventually. It was just dreadful.
And it's not him, and it's not funny, and it's...
They'd got the wrong guy, right, for the job. And that's the thing is I'm not going to get Coconut Kells to come and try and explain engineering to me. It's not on brand for her. That's not what her audience wants. So, my investment in her name is not going to, deliver any return on investment if she's not her. Exactly. Likewise, if you're speaking to, if you're putting someone on YouTube versus putting someone on Instagram versus putting someone on TikTok, be true to the platform as well. So YouTube, it's a lean back, lean in medium. So it's lean in the sense that you have to click and la. But by the time you've landed where you want to be, you cross over into a lean back experience, and you just want to consume. And that's why YouTube, I think, is a largely underutilized marketing platform at this point. Because it's so gentle, I think it's hard to persuade people of its efficacy. But you just take people, create content, and entertain people. And they slowly tiptoe to the edge of that funnel. They don't even know they're there. Right. And they slip into the funnel so quickly and so easily. And they are so open to message by the time you've entertained them, that they slip down the funnel and are, into the sales funnel or into the watch funnel on our side, without realizing it. And they're not cross about it, because you've taken them from a point of entertainment to another point of entertainment. Likewise with TikTok, don't try and shoot a documentary. Do something silly.
Exactly.
That's what it's there for.
You can't create an hour's worth of content either.
Yes, Facebook is slower and a little bit older. Twitter, argue with people. Bring...
Have conversations.
Spice. Yeah. And bring spice.
Yeah.
That's what people are there for. If you don't bring spice, they are going to eat you alive.
Fire it up.
Yeah, so just be aware of, your medium. And, with the YouTube content, the one thing I had to remind the people the agency we were working with is there is no fourth wall on YouTube. So with TV, we create that illusion that the world you're escaping into is real.
The fourth wall? Just take a step back there. Like, what do you mean by that?
So the fourth wall is that invisible wall between you and the world of Batwoman.
Okay.
You look through this invisible wall into another world and you believe it's true.
Okay.
And they never cross that wall, except for like a Modern Family where they talk to you through the fourth wall.
Oh, yes, I get you, yeah.
So mostly, unless by design, they're never aware of the camera.
Yeah.
YouTube, on frame 1, the wall's gone.
Yeah.
Because people go, hi guys.
Yeah. Correct.
So there's no fourth wall. So let's not pretend we're making TV. Let's make YouTube.
Yeah.
And then they go, but can we put it on air? I'm like, probably. You could put it on TV, but it's not going to land as strongly because it's a different platform and people are in a different mindset. Even their bodies are in a different state. Correct. When they're watching on one platform or another.
I can't, emphasize that enough, is that there's a complete different psychological mindset of the consumer. People go to Facebook. Usually, if you look at, when the average person opens Facebook, they don't actually usually go there to be entertained. They literally just go there to catch up on a couple of things. What my friend's up to? Did I miss anything important? in today, what happened today, and friends and family, kind of like a catch up. Instagram is more of a, and this is how we see it, it's like more of an escape kind of like platform where I want to see what's happening, but I want to be guarded from any unnecessary clutter. So I just want to see the visual appealing stuff. And that's how obviously why Instagram only does videos, and they've got Reels now, obviously, as well, which is a competitor to TikTok. And then if you look at TikTok, people purely go there to be entertained, and at a point where I want to laugh, or I want to, see something amazing. And that's a completely different mindset to Instagram. And you, like you said, with YouTube as well. Very interesting about the fourth wall. And you mentioned Modern Family, and one of my favorite shows of all time is The Office, where they also do that. Absolutely correct. And I think one thing I wanted to mention is, when you were speaking about YouTube, actually, I think we're shooting this we're still in August, but I think early next week, so it should be the 1st of September, I'm going to be on Digitize Your Business. So we shot an episode on YouTube, actually.
Oh, cool.
Specifically YouTube. And I was asked if, YouTube creates a bit of a barrier for brands, because not every single brand they said, the question was, how can brands advertise on YouTube or be active on YouTube, because of the fact that it's not necessarily suitable for every single business. And I said, well, that's where you're wrong. Like, I really believe that any business can be on YouTube, because it all comes down to the content. And I said, if you're a plumber, you can make educational content around, how to fix your own pipes, drains, showers, clogs, like quick DIY tips. And, we were talking about lawyers, giving people legal advice and explaining different stories and scenarios that's happened. You can actually make a whole series on, some cases are super interesting. Like, you can actually create a whole series around the most interesting cases. You don't have to mention names, but it's like, essentially, it's a form of edutainment, and that's how I see YouTube a lot, because it's the second largest search engine in the world. So it means that people go there to search stuff. So there's a large form of education happening. But there's also a large form of entertainment, if you look at all the cat videos.
Yes.
So it's almost like this mix between education and entertainment. And I think if you can combine both at the same time, a lot of brands can do well. But I think when it comes to content marketing, specifically knowing that we are more catered to SMEs, I think a lot of brands think that they're going to invest in content and immediately see a direct return. And that's not necessarily how content marketing works. And it brings me to my next question. I think essentially, what should be the end goal of content marketing, really? When you create content and when you're deciding that you're going to invest money into content marketing, what should be the end goal of that? Because I think a lot of brands don't know. A lot of brands just invest in it because they've been told to. Some do it because their competitors are doing it. Nobody truly re-engineers the process and goes, this is why we want to create this content, and this is why we're going to put money behind it.
Sure. And I think first is to define what content marketing is, because a lot of people think content marketing must make a video. But editorial can be content marketing, and then you amplify it. You use amplification tools, and it lands up in those kind of similar articles sections on other people's pages. So you can publish on your own website. I mean, you can do it. You can have your own WordPress. You can be small, right? You can have your own WordPress site, generate interesting, rich, immersive editorial that maybe not other people aren't doing. Use a tool like Taboola, for example, amplify it out, and it lands up on Channel 24. But you're paying Taboola money for Channel 24 exposure.
Correct.
So content marketing is a lot of things. It's not a fully produced YouTube video only. So I think that's the first thing, is to say it's all of those things, all of those places where your customers can engage with you is content marketing. Then to look at which one's right, firstly, for your specific set of customers. So just because your competitors on YouTube doesn't mean it's the right place. Just means someone told them they should be there. But where are your customers really? And then understand that your first value that you're going to see is engagement. So as much as your customer is going to learn more about you, you're going to learn more about them. And really listen hard. Listen to everything they say or don't say. And start, learning from that, as well as obviously the analytics tools and that. Yeah. But remember, analysis is a machine, and you're dealing with humans. So remember to be a human as well. So definitely use analysis, because it'll show you dips, It won't show you why, though. That's where you have to go back to being a human and say, what happened here? Oh, okay, power outage or Cricket World Cup. Of course they went somewhere else.
Makes sense.
But then
It's not that your show sucked.
Yes,
yeah, something else just
exactly.
and you can only watch one piece of content at a time if you think about it.
And remember, if the noise that a World Cup makes, no SME can make bigger noise than that.
Correct.
And especially if you're sort of in that same target market, just understand that at that point, the wisest thing for you to do is step back.
Correct.
And be quiet.
Or plug in somehow.
And then come back. Yes, or engage in conversations. And I think that's the thing is next to understand that once you're engaging, then become consistent and remain authentic. So if you come out of the gate, like Wendy's hamburgers came out of the gate being douchebags, but they remained douchebags.
I love their Facebook posts and ads and stuff there. Yeah.
They're infamous, but then they consistently stayed that way. If you're going to be friendly, if you're going to be, the guy next door that I go to for advice, then stay that guy. And, remain authentic and consistent in what you're doing. And then know that it's not a one-to-one investment. It's a 1 to 0 for a period of time.
Correct.
And then it's a 1 to 5. And there isn't really an in-between phase. So if you do it right and people start engaging with you and they start caring about you and you start imprinting yourself on their DNA, they start telling other people, and that's where you jump from 0 to 5. And that's why I say there isn't really a period in between, because it's this quiet, boom, explosion, if you got it right.
And it's sometimes just one piece of content that creates that explosion, and
Yeah.
it kind of like sheds light onto the whole business and the whole brand or whatever is happening. And I think, I always use our podcast as an example. We're creating content right now. We're doing content marketing. And funny enough, we don't see a direct return on investment on it. And like you said, the first feedback or the first, form of value, I think, is engagement, like you said. And that's where we're getting the views and the comments on YouTube and the shares on social media. And also, again, you said, it's 1 to 0, which I truly believe in, because like I said, we don't necessarily get any return from it. However, it has helped us as a business make connections with people who we feel we have synergies with, and companies who believe we can add value to. And in an indirect way, it's actually, helped us grow as a business. And if I look at the content that we're creating, you've also mentioned consistency. Like, I don't think a lot of people really truly understand how important being consistent is when it comes to creating content, because they shoot a video, they post it, and then they go, oh, nothing happened. And that is the 1 to 0 phase, where, you're just creating content in order to start, hopefully build up some momentum. And from a consistency standpoint, we're on episode, what is this, 18, Shay? We're on episode number 17. And from our side is like, we're not planning on stopping. We're really enjoying it. So the passion that fuels the passion fuels the consistency, and we're slowly starting to see that we're moving towards the 1 to 5 range, where a lot of people are going, there's nothing like this. The content that you're sharing is really great. It's local. It's awesome, because you do get this in an international level, but not necessarily from a local perspective. And I think that's really cool. I want to touch on something you mentioned, Taboola. For those who don't know, Taboola is a PPC platform from a native standpoint. So it's showing native ads. Is that the right Taboola that I'm referring to?
Yes.
So it's basically just a PPC platform where you can run ads, and they actually now have an ads manager where you can actually go and manage your own ads. And previously you had to have an account manager back in the day that had to manage all the stuff for you, which is really cool for those who want to check that out. But from my side, I absolutely agree with everything that you said there. And I think like you said, the first thing is getting that engagement, and then there's a feedback loop. Now you're creating content to try and understand how people are reacting, then you're using that to your advantage to improve your content, to improve your messaging, to improve your product, to improve so much of your business. And I think a lot of people don't do that at all.
For sure. And I think even before you begin, I think it goes down to brand basics. Know who you are and what you stand for, and let that inform the content that you create. Yeah. Because remember, through engagement, you want to build brand love as well, and kind of brand connection. If you haven't done that first step, which is to say, who are we as a brand, and what do we stand for? By the time people start engaging with you, there's nothing for them to love.
Yeah.
It's kind of that very hippy dippy thing, or even what RuPaul says. If you can't love yourself, how the hell are you gonna love somebody else?
That's a good impression.
But if you don't know what you stand for, how can I believe in you?
Yeah.
You know, and I think Nike is the most brilliant example of that.
Absolutely.
They took a really now it's seen as like the right thing to do, but when they took the stand, it was a risky stand for the brand. Gillette took a stand as well, you know, and now people wear those brands or use those brands as a badge of and just a badge of I'm a real person and I care about things. And by wearing that little swish now, it means something again. So, you know, back in just when it was a good thing just to be fit, wearing the swish meant that I would just do it. I was the guy, right? But we're in a different world now where people are looking for brands with heart. So now that little swish means I take a knee.
Yeah.
You know, I take a stand. And I think it's important to know that about yourself, because that has to reflect in everything you create. It has to inform your voice. So what words do you choose to use in your editorial? What copy do you use? What tone do you use? Who do you target? Who do you choose to engage with? You know, if you are going to get to influencers at some point, are they on brand for you? The only way you know that is if you know who you are, because they sure as hell know who they are. So that's why a Mechlali can, you know, break the internet on a weekly basis. She knows who she is, into her heart and her soul. And as a brand, you have to know that. And it sounds very kind of self-help book to say that, but it's true. And we're seeing nowadays, you know, there was a time of aspirational brands. So it was all about whiz, bang, flash, aspire to be exclusive. But, you know, through 2008 and now again through COVID, it's not cool to be flashy and whiz bang and Rolex guy. You know, it's vulgar and it's tone deaf. And you need to be more connected to people. People want to feel like you know who they are and they know who you are, and that you meet them on that level playing field. Yeah. Then they buy into you, and then they kind of buy into your product. And that's what content marketing does for you, is let you get onto that playing field. So like what you were saying about Cricket World Cup, get involved in it.
Yeah,
Don't
see
try
how you
and
can
fight
plug in
against it. Yeah, have a conversation.
And if your narrative doesn't fit the conversation, then just stay out of it. Like essentially, if you have nothing to say, and if your brand doesn't, you know, if it doesn't mix well, just keep quiet and wait for it to end, or like go onto a medium, try and target people who are not interested in cricket.
Remember, remember that for every very noisy event that's happening, there's a whole bunch of people going, ugh.
Exactly.
And if your brand, again, know that about your brand. If your brand's also going, ugh, then go hang out with ugh people.
Exactly, connect with them, because obviously you have something in common, right? You mentioned Nike, and I think another brand that pops in, and I've used it on the podcast as an example before, is also Apple. Like Apple has that kind of like, I stand for creativity, I stand for... Also, they touch on the Rolex side, because I mean, a lot of the products are expensive, and a lot of times you can't necessarily justify spending that kind of money when there's equipment on the market that's just as good. So they've had that exclusive kind of like mix where people want to flash their logo and the Apple phone, and you know, they want to plug out their, you know, their headphone. They want to walk around with these when the wireless headphones just came out, like they had like these white, you know, things hanging from your ears. And I think, but essentially, you know, they stood for, when Steve Jobs was still around, like he went for all unique and creativity, and a lot of people started resonating with that message, and they just doubled down on it. But Nike is such a great example. Even Tesla, if I look at Tesla, you know, the message that they have as a brand, Elon Musk himself is a character that people, you know, he goes on to Joe Rogan and drinks whiskey and smokes weed, and they lose like 10% market share, 10% when it comes to the stock price. But then again, that's him, and he doesn't get fired from his position because they believe in Elon Musk and his message and what he stands for. And before you know it, they've grown past, you know, the point of losses, and you know, they've kept growing.
Yeah, it's not to say that you can't be expensive. Apple's expensive, but they're not flashy about, if you own us, then people know that you spent a lot of money.
Yeah,
you know, they, like you said, they reached where they really saw massive market share growth was when they reached out to the weirdos, and that was that first advert.
Think different.
Here's to the.
Yeah.
It reached out to the designers, who are cooler now than they were back then.
Yeah.
Back then they were just a bit smelly and odd looking, right? Now they're very cool.
Yeah.
Because the Elon Musks and that of the world are owning companies. But back in the day, they were kind of smelly oddballs. And here came this brand that said, we see you and we have a product for you. Think different.
Yeah.
And
we know how valuable you are.
yes. And they had always been, at that point, the badge of different was a brand. It was the reason, and not a brand in a good way, like a brand in a hot thing that burns your skin kind of way. It was the thing that got you beat up on the playground. And they turned it on its head and made it cool. So even though they're expensive, it's not, they don't make themselves about being expensive.
Yeah.
They make themselves about being different, is being cool.
Yeah. Well, they had that thing they had that whole Think Different campaign. There was a joke happening at head office. So I read Steve Jobs' book just after he died, and they had this whole Think Different campaign, and they talked about it in the biography. And apparently, he kept on parking in the disabled parking spot.
Yes, 2 of them across them.
Yes, and someone went out and I think created a sign that says "Park Different."
That's brilliant.
And he obviously, saw the humor in that, but he didn't change his habits. But from the book, from what I gathered, I read it a long time ago, so I might be missing 1 or 2 things. But essentially, it came down to, they made a joke at head office saying like, he's living up to the slogan. He's not just thinking differently; he's also parking differently.
Yeah, but I mean, their innovation came from exactly that. So they knew what they stood for, and they lived it. So he was always thinking different. So now we just have, the camera sees you and you don't know. But for the longest time, the innovation was the one button that did lots of things,
Yes.
right? And that, also in the book, came from when he was in a private jet and there was an open button and a close button. And he said, why do you need 2?
Yeah,
If it's open, then the button should close it. And if it's
Exactly.
closed, then the button should
because
open
there's no other things
it.
to do. Yeah,
Like it has one purpose, open or close. So you don't need 2. So make 1. And, so they very much knew who they were. In their ethos was thinking differently. Even being able to go put up a sign for your mega CEO to say park different. You can't do that at a lot of companies, you'll be HR immediately. So the culture is different. Google is infamous for its, lounges and colorfulness and the 20% time.
nap pods.
Yes, and the 20% time you can take to innovate and fail, and it's part of their soul. And so they know when they sell something or they market something. I mean, they don't really have to anymore, but they would know what to say. They fail well is one of their kind of brand ethoses, brand values is. And that's where their innovation comes from, and that's where their colorful logo comes from. And that, knowing that before you start anything is how you'll make sure that your content marketing lands properly and connects with the right person. Because, I mean, if you think about OutSurance, they're bright, they're purple, they're green, they make noisy adverts and they speak to people. But that's who they are. Like, you see an OutSurance advert a mile away.
And Nando's.
Nando's, I mean, Nando's is classic, right? I mean, Nando's isn't about chicken. Like, whether you eat the chicken or not, it's irrelevant. Nando's is about being cool and being other. By eating Nando's, you stand against the man, you wave your middle finger at the guy who did the thing on the day. There's more of a culture to Nando's than there is a chicken. I mean, I always laugh, like I order mild at Nando's and then I wait to see what I get.
True.
Because it really is whatever brush the guy who's doing the grilling is using at the time.
Exactly. I've had that experience.
It's yummy.
And you don't mind.
Yes, because somehow I'm cool.
Yeah.
Even when they screw up my order and my face is on fire, somehow I'm still a little bit cool because they put up their board and I laughed.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, absolutely, and I agree with that. Bringing things a little back to Multichoice a little bit, I think maybe, I would love to know from a local standpoint, we've talked about content marketing, we've talked about all these brands. Looking at how you guys used to do things versus, this digital disruption that's happening, looking at potentially how you're doing things now, I would love to get a little bit, maybe like a bit of a insider's view on how things have changed in terms of your content strategy over the last couple
sure.
of years, months, whatever.
So again, we have the dual meaning of content.
Correct.
So we had our media showcase last week, and our CEO was talking about hyperlocal, and that really is who we are. You know, we've always been hyperlocal. So we have this line that sort of encapsulates everything, and that is, you know, telling Africa's stories to the world and bringing the world's stories home. And that's really what's at our soul, is those stories. So, you know, Netflix started saying Netflix originals. We've been doing originals for 30 years. Egoli was an original.
Yes.
We just used to call them original.
And I used to remember that so well.
Yes.
Like I remember from the ages of like 6 years old, my parents religiously, 6 o'clock, it was Egoli and 7 Alarm, you know, obviously on an SABC, but like I remember it so well. And so it was like, it's still back in my mind.
So we started there, you know, and then Zanzi Magic just turned 10 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, which was spectacular. So when Mzansi launched, actually was when I still had my agency, and we launched it. We launched it with Yulisa Pachle, who was head of the channel at the time, who's now our CEO of General Entertainment. And, you know, that was really the beginning. She started with Channel O, and then did Zanzi Magic and Channel O, and now, as I say, CEO of General Entertainment. And that was really the beginning of the journey into this hyper-local, was the South African or African stories in African languages, so that people see themselves on TV. And then from there, you know, that has now evolved into this these co-productions that you're seeing. So we saw Trackers, which was a co-production with Cinemax, which is an HBO company.
Yes, and that did really well.
It's done really well.
I haven't actually watched it yet. Don't blame me for it, but it's been
It's
on my watch
Showmax,
list. Yeah,
so
it's on my watch list.
hit that button. And another one, hand on heart, you have got to watch Still Breathing.
Still Breathing, okay.
Dude,
Really?
that show is...
Takes your breath away?
Oh, you know why? Because you watch the show and there's scenes in there where you just go, oh, that's my life. Well, not like my personally, but that's our life. So there's this amazing scene in the first episode where one of the main stars, she's walking, she's got her coffee in the morning, she's got her key, panic button on her keys, like we all do. You know, suburban life. She's walking, she goes and she's standing at her gate, she sips her coffee, and these robbers hop over the wall in front of her, and they've nicked a TV, and they're running away. Sips her coffee, pushes her panic button, and then checks, well, the security company coming. It blew my mind, because I was like, that is so real.
Yeah, I mean, that's literally like it was actually taken in real time.
Yes, exactly. So, you know, we've got those shows happening on Mnet. We've got the Zanzi Magic shows. We've got shows on CakeNet. Outside of our borders, you know, in Zambia we have bespoke channels there. In Nigeria we have quite a few bespoke channels. We're launching different language channels into, I think, even Ethiopia. You know, so it's really that hyper localness, because more than anything, people like to see a reflection of themselves on TV. You know, and that speaks to that authenticity. So that's where we, you know, are obviously telling Africa stories within Africa and then taking them to the world. So there's more co-productions coming very soon. We announced Blood Psalms, which is a new big co-production that is coming, and there'll be more and more of those. So in the years where we've had these relationships with the international studios, where we've licensed the content of the world to bring it home, we're now seeing those relationships evolve into co-production relationships, which is spectacular. So that is really the platform on which we stand, is this hyper-local, but also bringing international stories home, platform of storytelling. And then from there, that's where our authentic voice comes from, that rolls out into our content marketing. You know, and that's where I say, you know, I would never presume to write sport. Likewise, I would never try and write an article for a show on Zanzi Magic. Yes. You know, you need someone who knows the content, who speaks the language, who is an actual viewer of the content, to speak to the customers who are viewing that content. You know, so it's really being that authentic about our stories and telling our stories, you know. So we always smile when we go into Heritage Month, because we don't have to put up a flag and say, this show for Heritage Month. Every day on our channels is Heritage Day, because we're telling African stories in African languages for African audiences. We're listening to our audiences. They're going, less of that, more of that kind of story. We're telling those stories again. Even, we've been speaking a while now. We're creating a series called Shaka Lembe. Everyone remembers Shaka Zulu, right? Boom, 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 boom.
Yes.
But it was told through a specific lens at a specific time. So this new telling, and it's not a retelling, it's a new telling of the Shaka story, is coming from a different perspective with different storytellers who are going to tell a more sort of grounded in culture story of Shaka Lembe. So it's really kind of doing that every time and saying, this story for this audience right now.
Yeah. You know what? The movie I think about that resonated in the back of my mind was The Joker. And because, he's obviously the villain and there's Batman, but then the story is told from a different angle, this time around. Have you seen the movie?
Yes. Oh,
and?
Ripped my whole heart out. It was, it's one of those
I'm getting goosebumps.
that lives like in your body for weeks after you've seen it.
It touches you on different levels. Well, that sounded weird, but like it touches your soul on all kinds of levels. And I think essentially, what it comes down to is like that's a completely different perspective, because when you look at the Joker, and if you're in a traditional Batman cartoon or a Batman film, you're like, yeah, get him, kick his ass.
Yes.
And then essentially after watching this movie, you're like, whoa, geez, okay. And I think that's, if you look at why the movie was, it was like on box office top chart, like number one for like quite some time.
And Oscar wins.
All kinds of stuff. And if you think about why it was so good, because if you have to dissect the movie and go like, there was no special effects, there was no like, if you look at Avengers, there was no Batman. If you look at the Avengers movie, that's got all this CGI and all kinds of After Effects. If you look at, sorry, I'm gonna have to cut that sound out there. But if you look at what actually the Joker film, technically, what they've put into it, you'd think, well, that's just a normal regular film. And then when you consider the fact that it's been in the box office and it's won all kinds of awards, then you realize there's an underlying message, and it resonates with people. And then obviously the gun shootings in America and all these things, I think it was one of those messages that just resonated.
And I think the mental health issues that they've been dealing
100%.
with in America, that have by and large for so long just been stigmatized and pushed aside, and the people that are suffering from it have been pushed aside, and then we see these explosions, and then because of the access to guns, it turns into these massacres. And I think that really spoke to her soul. And we see in storytelling actually this evolution to the anti-hero, because I think as humans, there's definitely a place for a Superman. You need to just believe in pure good.
Absolutely.
You need to believe in the they. There's always that they. They will fix it. They will sort it out. They will come. But if we look into ourselves and into reality and into each other, none of us are pure good or pure evil. Obviously there's a few psychopaths and blah, 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 but out, on the edges. But en masse, none of us are pure good or pure evil. And sometimes it's good to root for the bad guy. If you look at Killing Eve, the series that's currently running on Fox, there you're always torn between the cop and the serial assassin. And you find yourself on the assassin side a lot of the time, going like, she's so cool. Oh, you've got to watch it. It is so funny. It's like you feel naughty because it's funny because it's about serial assassin. But the dynamic between the two is so spectacular. And the actress who plays Villanelle is so good. And bear in mind, this is her first major role. Her main accent she has to deliver in is Russian. She's a Liverpudlian with the heaviest Liverpool accent you've ever heard in your life. Oh, yeah. She switches between accents like this through the scenes. You've never seen anything like it. But she has a comic timing to her that you just can't miss. And then obviously she's opposite Christina O, who is like, her comic timing is second to none. So the dynamic is spectacular. And again, you're rooting for the villain. So it's this anti-hero sort of thing. And even the cop isn't all good. She's deeply, deeply flawed. And there's another show coming. Oh, it's on BBC right now. We Hunt Together, which is a pair of killers and a pair of cops. And again, you find yourself sort of almost on the side of the killers.
Yeah, and you don't want to say it out loud.
Yes, and you're like, oh kill, stab. But this kind of anti-hero storytelling is really there. And I think it is, again, people are tired of being shouted at, tired of being of the on the hill kind of vibe, and they're really looking for that engagement, that one-on-one engagement where I can see myself. Yeah. You know, I see a reflection of myself, I see my story, I relate, and therefore I engage, and therefore I buy.
You talked about Killing Eve, is it?
Mm-hmm.
There's one show, actually, funny enough, it's on Showmax, even though it's an American production, but I'm also torn. Like, usually there's a good side and a bad side. Billions?
Oh, God, I love that show.
So it's literally one of my favorite shows. And it's purely because, again, you've got this, you know, guy on the good side of the law. Well, it's supposed to be a good guy on the law side who's supposed to be good. Who's obviously absolutely corrupt. And then there's this guy who obviously, you know, is just all a capitalist, like always just trying to make the next buck. And does some really awful things sometimes to make money. But then also he's got this weird good side. Occasionally there would come, like, there's a soft side that comes through. And again, you know, people just resonate with that purely because of the fact that on the good side, there are bad people. On the bad side, there are good people. And this could go into American politics as well, probably. But I think, you know, we don't want to digress too much. But the point is that content is about really what's going to resonate with people. Yeah. And from a marketing perspective, you need to ask yourself that and re-engineer the process and really think hard about what you're going to put out. And you know, we talked about that feedback loop. But in terms of putting a content strategy together, can, you know, if you don't want to share any advice or... hopefully you would want to share some advice. But if you don't want to share, you know, internal procedures or anything like that, but maybe you can just give people some advice on you know, how either you guys or how you would advise, you know, SMEs would go about crafting a bit of a content strategy, maybe just like a top level rundown on how you think it would work or should work.
Sure. I think I've touched on it in bits and pieces, but I can consolidate it into one thought.
Exactly.
But, you know, once I start talking content, my thoughts go, but let me do that. Put it in one sentence. I think step one is really know who you are as a brand. You know who you are, what you stand for. Then, obviously, identify your target market. You need to know really who you're going for, and not necessarily who you want to only go for, but who really are your target market right now, and then who you want to, your secondary target market, where you want to grow to. Find out where they are. So there's no point going to Facebook to try and market to Gen Y. Gen Z, sorry. Gen Y is there. Gen Z, you know. They're not on Facebook. So find out where your audience really are. Then listen to them before you start talking to them at all. Because remember, the moment you start talking to them, you have to be consistent. So don't talk. Just listen. Listen to what they're talking about. Listen to what they care about. Listen to how they speak and who they speak to each other and when they speak as well. Because that's going to be important once you put your strategy together. Although that moves. And you can certainly engineer that, but do start by injecting yourself into where and when they are, then start putting your strategy together. Identify the media you want to go to, see what you can use on several platforms. So even though we spoke about being authentic to the platform you're on, it doesn't mean you can't make a 20-minute video for YouTube and a 10-second like loop
story
for
ad,
TikTok.
whatever.
Yeah. You know, you can certainly adapt what you make to the different platforms. It doesn't mean that you shoot for one and then all of the others are out of scope. And maybe remember to plan for that when you're planning your production as well.
Yes.
Down to landscape versus portrait. You know, so if you are shooting landscape, remember to plan that some of it can be cropped into portrait. And then start...
Did you hear that, Shay?
And then start testing. You know, so if you've done all this kind of groundwork, and this is what makes people nervous. Spend more time listening and thinking before you start doing, which is going to make your bosses nervous because they're going to be like, nothing's happening.
Yes.
Because listening and thinking is a silent process.
Correct.
So manage them with timelines, manage up with timelines and milestones and such. But
manage expectations.
Yeah. But then start engaging. And then remember that you're not going to have people banging down your doors on day one. So start engaging, just all you need to see on the first few engagements is it resonating? Are people engaging at least? You know, they don't have to share, even if they give you a like, if they give you a lol, if they give you an emoji, they're starting to engage. Watch that. You use analytics and use humanness at the same time in course correcting and planning. Don't panic. If it falls off a cliff, it doesn't mean it was terrible. It might just mean something else happened.
Yeah.
You know, really be brave. And then after a period of time, and really set a line in the sand that says, after this period of time, let's reevaluate everything we've done, see what really worked, see what was absolutely ice cold, and make a new plan. Not a brand new plan. Don't clean the slate. A new plan built on the old plan.
Yeah, just a kind of improvement almost.
So evolve. Do more of what worked and less of what didn't. And then don't forget to keep listening, because humans change. So because you were listening a year ago and you made your content plan, doesn't mean the people you were listening to a year ago are even still there or saying the same things, because things like pandemics happen.
Absolutely. Nobody plans for that.
Yes.
Like
and
Bill Gates have told us, but we didn't listen.
yes.
Just
And your audience voice and their opinion and their needs change. But now if you've been listening the whole time, you're right there with them. Then move with them. Because the more you move with them, the more they believe in you.
Well, this again, you know, this is not a Nando's promotional podcast, but I mean, they listen a lot. That's how they come up with this content that resonates. The moment something happens, they're like, hey, let's, you know, this is how the market reacted to it. There's like, this is a trending hashtag on Twitter. Let's create a quick 30-second ad. And I think a lot of what you said there, you know, not a lot of people know this, but version 8, you know, in short, we're V8, and we used to be V8 when we just started, but the version 8 changed to the word actual 8, like spelled out 8. So it's actually called version 8. Well, people don't know that 8 actually stands for something. So, and the reason I'm bringing this up now is because the first part of what you said, what you stand for, target market, where they're hanging out, all those things is basically a reflection of what the brand stands for. So if we look at 8, the E stands for establish your target market. Because we're not going to be able to succeed in marketing if you don't.
Sure.
From our side, we do direct response marketing. That's what we do. So the I stands for identify their pains, fears, hopes, and dreams. Like you really need to get a good understanding of what that is, so that you can draw out those emotions, because usually those emotions lead to actions. The G stands for, and again, you know, you're not going to be able to do anything without this, and it's garner their attention. You need to grab their attention in some way, shape, or form, and that's why understanding the platform you're advertising on from a psychological perspective is so important. You know, whether it's YouTube, Instagram, what are you going to put in front of people? If you know, like you said, TikTok is, you know, 10-second snippets. You know, the last thing you want to do is put up a war documentary. You know, the H at the end of the day stands for, and this is what we truly believe, and this is where content, I feel, comes in, is like really help your target market, okay? And what we mean by that is that once you've identified their pains and fears, what can you do as a brand to help them without having to be compensated for it immediately?
Yes.
And what can you do to add value?
So that's where love comes from.
Exactly, 100%. So this podcast, the information that we share here, helps SMEs, helps other companies. You see, we practice what we preach, guys. So essentially what happens is that and again, from the podcast perspective, we have long form on YouTube, we have on iOS and Google, but then on my Instagram and on V8's Instagram, you know, we have little 2, 3, 4 minute snippets because we repurpose that content, and hopefully that content assists people with their goals and you know, their troubles. And then lastly, we have the T, and it actually stands for 2 things. One, stay top of mind. So top of mind as a brand, you want to remain top of mind. And there are cost-effective ways to do this with digital media these days from a remarketing perspective and all that kind of stuff. And then lastly, timing of your offer. Sure. Because ideally you're in business to make money, right? And obviously you want to, at the same time, you can't run a business if it's not profitable. So you need, obviously, a profitable business to do everything that you want to do. But at the same time, you want to ensure that whatever you're selling with the service or product adds value to people's lives. And there's a fair exchange in terms of, you know, value and price.
Absolutely.
So again, you don't want to be a brand that just says, buy my product, buy my product, buy my product. So therefore, timing of your offer is really crucial. And when do you actually ask for the sale? So that's in digital marketing, we have what we call the funnel.
Yeah.
Everybody knows the funnel, right? Awareness, really getting people to understand the brand and add the value. And then when the time is right, present your offer, and then you'll see that the magic happens. So I just actually wanted to touch on that because of what you said in the beginning, what you stand for, your target market, where they're hanging out, and really understanding and resonating with them. All those things are crucial. And from my side, also just wanted to mention that because I don't think a lot of people even know. We're not doing a good enough job at explaining that. And then I think from my side, like you've mentioned all these tips and tactics now, and thank you for adding so much value. That's actually been really, really amazing. From a final note perspective, is there anything else that you don't have to, so just start sweating thinking if there's anything that you still need to add. But like, I just want to, as we start rounding off, is there anything that you think we might have missed, or anything that we, can conclude with, or anything that you think maybe like just a word of advice for anybody out there?
I think two points actually that you had in your acronym. Helping people is really important. We have a lady in our customer experience area who keeps saying, why do brands make me feel stupid?
Oh, really?
And, the have you forgotten your password journey is one of the classic journeys where you're made to feel stupid.
How so?
So, you put your password in, you forget it. You're like,
I have never seen it like that because
I can't
maybe I'm
believe
ignorant to the fact that I might be stupid.
Can't believe I've done this again. Put it in. Can't believe it. You're locked out. And then at the bottom it says, forgot your password. But there's this big thing that says you're locked out, right? Yeah. And I know it's there to kind of discourage, fraudsters, but that's not going to do the job. So what it does is for your repeat customers, they now feel frustrated, they feel stupid, they feel belittled. They may not come back. They may go on the forgot your password journey. So there's just an easier way right up front when someone seems to have forgotten their password to just gently say to them, we see you, how can we help you? As opposed to, stupid.
You're an idiot. Yes. Now you have to go through all these 6 mails to get your password back.
Exactly.
All these 6 steps.
And I think people appreciate you are trying to protect them, but on the other hand, don't make them feel stupid because they feel like you try to protect them from themselves, right? And then the other one where you said value, I think that's the important thing for people. And I think that's the difference that has happened with 2008 now, COVID, economic changes, is from that flash, whiz, bang vibe to how does this make my life better? And I think if you can demonstrate that to people. So, we do entertainment. We're under no illusions that we're saving lives. That's not what we do. But through entertainment, you let people see a reflection of themselves. You also let people escape to other worlds, to other places. Now during lockdown, you could travel the world from your couch. So there was still a value there, and we added exercise videos and we added cooking and, so be in touch and add value. And then that's where that connection remains and that kind of brand love establishes. And then you get ambassadors and they start doing the job for you. And suddenly your media spend goes down, but your reach goes up.
Yeah, 100%. No, you're absolutely right. And thank you again for adding all that value. And I think you've put, content marketing as a whole in perspective, I think, definitely. Thank you for that. And look, not that you're here to, a lot of people come on here and ideally we want to add value by sharing their message with the world, but also putting them in touch, their services in touch. Obviously, that's not necessarily in your case. But if somebody wanted to get in touch with you on social channels, perhaps, or anywhere, like where can they get a hold of you?
Bron Schultz everywhere.
Okay.
All social channels. I'm out there.
Okay.
Mostly my accounts are private.
Yeah.
But if you reach out, happy days. Business obviously more on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Quite active there.
Awesome.
For chats and things. I'll be sharing this podcast when it's up.
Thank you.
For sure.
I really
and then
appreciate that.
Watch TV.
Yeah, as much as you can.
Yes.
And then there are people that say, stop watching TV.
Don't listen to your parents, they're wrong.
Cool, man. No, thank you again for coming through. It was a real pleasure having you in studio, and it was awesome having a content marketing chat with you. Thanks again for all the value.
Thank you.
Yeah, we hope to potentially have you again on board sometime
with pleasure.
In the near future.
Sure.
Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. All the best, and we're going to see you guys next week.